to everyone. Again, I would like to piggyback off of what Christina said and say thank you for joining us today, this morning, for this webinar on managing disruptions. We all know how it can be when you are an entrepreneur and you are focused and trying to make moves and grow and do different things, and then something happens in the business and you have to pivot, you have to figure out how to change, and it's things that you have not prepared for. And so the purpose of this webinar today is to give you best practices on what to do so that way you can try and stay ahead of the issues that you know you might encounter. And so I just want to give a little bit of information about Urban League of Louisiana to those who are not familiar with us and what it is that we offer. So Urban League of Louisiana Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation actually has three legs. We have the Women's Business Resource Center, which is where I'm the director of. We have our Contractors Resource Center, and then we have our LADOTD DBE Supportive Services Center. And in these centers, what we aim to do is, number one, educate and train entrepreneurs that are in every stage of business. So you can be in startup, you can be in early stage, you can be in growth stage. We offer these type of trainings to be able to help you facilitate your entrepreneurship journey. In addition to that, we offer entrepreneur development and leadership training programs, such as our Startup for Louisiana, as well as our Scale Up Louisiana program. And these programs are offered all across Louisiana. In addition to that, we offer a restaurant accelerator program that focuses on people who are in the restaurant industry, as well as people who are trying to get products and production up and running as well. We also offer one-on-one business counseling for entrepreneurs. So regardless of what stage you're in, we have entrepreneurs who need assistance, you need guidance, you need support. And our business advisors are here to offer you that support by meeting you where you are as an entrepreneur and understanding what your exact needs are to be able to help you manage and move forward. In our Contractors Resource Center, we offer mastery level training and advanced counseling and a technology lab for our contractors who are going into the bid process, who are trying to figure out how to maneuver that world, what systems do they need to have set up. And then in addition to all of that, we provide access to resources and connections through networking and events. So Urban League is more like a partner. We're a spearhead. We don't offer direct funding, but we connect our entrepreneurs to the different resources and utilize the connections that we have with different entities to be able to help you reach the goals that it is that you have again. So as you receive emails from us, you'll notice some of our logos that come across those emails. And you'll notice, like I said, our Startup Louisiana, our Scale Up Louisiana, Resilient Restart, our BRAP program. So if you see these programs and you see these emails come across, make sure that if you aren't ready to pursue any of these programs, then you pass it along to entrepreneurs who you feel could benefit from it. And so if you are interested in learning more about what it is that Urban League of Louisiana does and how we operate, you can follow us on our social media platforms. In addition, you can also follow us on Eventbrite to be able to see what events and trainings that we have coming up. And if you have additional questions or you're interested in being able to receive business advising, then you can email us at one of the email addresses that you see on your screen. And Christina will also post this information in the chat as well, so that way you can have access to it outside of this slide. So with that being said, I would like to turn it over. And first, I will give a special thanks to our sponsors, who is LED, the Louisiana Economic Development, and EDA, which is the U.S. Economic Development Administration. So a special thank you to our sponsors, because without them, we wouldn't be able to hold these no-cost trainings and offer these things to you all. But with that being said, I would like to introduce our speaker, our facilitator for today, who is Bonnie Cannell. She is the managing director of the Resiliency Institute. Bonnie is an internationally recognized leader in both community and business resilience, innovations, and strategies. Bonnie has worked in the field of communication resiliency for 15 years, while also bringing 30 years of work experience within the information technology sector. And I'm going to let her tell the rest of her bio, because it is absolutely amazing. And I do believe that because of her experience and because of her bio, she'll be able to tie all of that information into her presentation. So with that being said, Bonnie, I really appreciate you and thank you for being our facilitator for today. And I will turn it over to you.
Thanks so much. And let me get back to our, hopefully you can see my screen, yes?
Yes, it's on full screen, yes.
So again, good morning, everyone, and hopefully we'll be finished in just enough time for everybody to run out to Jazz Fest, right? Because it's a beautiful day outside. Unfortunately, I think it's going to be a little warmer than it's been yesterday and the day before. So again, thank you. Again, my name is Bonnie Cannell. As I always like to tell folks, I'm a native New Orleanian, which means, of course, I was born here. So it's not one of those, I've been here 25 years, you know, and I'm 47 years old. But as everyone knows, over the last few years, especially since Katrina, you know, we've had a little bit of challenge here. I always talk about Katrina in terms of a little bit of wind, a little bit of rain, a little bit of water. But we all know that, you know, we are susceptible to disasters or to opportunities. And so again, while no one likes to talk about this, which I completely understand, hopefully we can, you know, have a conversation about this. And I really want to encourage you to ask as many questions as you like. I always say that folks never, ever, 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 and I could say ever enough, like to talk about disaster preparedness, business continuity, things like that. Most people aren't interested in that. I always say, you know, it's not going to happen to me. It's going to be somebody else. You know, I'm not going to get sick. I'm not going to grow old. I'm not going to die. Disasters aren't going to happen to me. But just because you don't think they will doesn't mean that they won't. So hopefully, excuse me, throughout this morning, we'll be able to address some of your issues and concerns, lay some information out, and begin this dialogue on really, really, really why it makes good sense to be prepared. And again, we'll get into this as we move forward. So as we talk about this, it's really, really simple. I always like to start in the beginning is, you know, a simplistic business structure is what you do with the people that you do it with and how you do it. And that's kind of, you know, how it all works, right? So what you do is obviously the work that you do, the people who do it, and it could be, you know, not only the people that you do that work with you, but the people that you work for, right? The things are your customers, your suppliers, anything like that. And how you do it is your, is your very special sauce, right? That's what makes you different from your competitors. And that's really what you have to start to look at, because that's the piece and part that is always going to be a little bit more vulnerable as you look forward. So as we look into this, let me get into this. This is just going kaflooey. Is as an owner's job, right, is to ensure that you can return to revenue producing activities as quickly as possible and maintain the viability of your organization. You've got to be able to do that relatively quickly. And it's really, really important to do that, because the longer that you don't have revenue, the more likely you are to not be able to recover in the long term. So everything that you do has to be thought about. How can we continue to get the money in the front door, right? And then it doesn't matter why the money's not coming in, but the money has to start coming in. And that's really the first premise of looking at why it's so important to prepare. is that we want to make sure that no matter what situation arises, we are able to return to work as quickly as possible. And talking about this, I always like to kind of begin at the beginning, right? And I talk about this a great deal, is the commonality of terms. It's really, really, really important to have this commonality of terms. And so when we talk about risk, it's the probability of a threat, right? And risk is something that could happen to us, right? And so you can mitigate risk, but you can't take away risk. So as we saw, right, if you have a lot of rain, the risk is the rain is going to make the water rise in the streets, and then you're going to have flooded houses or flooded streets. What you can do to mitigate the flooded streets are better drainage, right? And so that is, you can't stop the rain. The rain's going to come, but you can mitigate against that. So again, a risk is the probability of a threat or damage, and that's really something to really think about when we're using these terms. A vulnerability is the degree to which you're susceptible to risk, right? So in New Orleans, as we talk about the rain, right, we're vulnerable because number one, we're under sea level, right? Number two, we have a drainage system that all of our water needs to be pumped out. And number three, we have some challenges with what's going on with our pumping systems, right? So we're very vulnerable to this rain, and then to the risk of flooding water. So again, it's the degree to which we are vulnerable to harm or degradation of property or anything like that. So hopefully when we're having these conversations and moving forward, it's really, really important. So has everyone at least experienced a disaster of some sort? If you have, just raise your hand. Or put, say yes, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't, as we always say, it's not if, it's when, right? So again, if you've experienced a disaster, did you have a plan? Were you able to think through the problem and think, gee, I wonder what's going to happen if? And then what type of disasters do we plan for? And so this idea behind this is that, and this is really true, is that 74% of businesses, and these are small to medium-sized businesses like ours, do not have a recovery plan. 84 do not have a natural disaster plan, and 71% do not have a backup generator. So as we think about this, is that every day you go to work, you should have some type of plan of what needs to happen today, right? Or you begin your week on a Monday morning and say, okay, we've got this plan for this week, and this is what we're going to do this week, or we need to order something, or we need to talk to these clients, or whatever that plan is. The idea behind this is that putting together these other plans to help mitigate against a disaster, that's the part of what we call doing business well. To really be successful in business, we have to plan for everything that could possibly happen. You want to plan for the good things too, right? You want to make sure that what is going on is a good thing, right? You want to make sure that the good things that are happening are able to happen, right? But you also want to ensure the success of your organization as it continues to go forward. This is probably the number one question people ask me, is when is it a disaster? Right? Because, how do we know if it's a disruption or a disaster? And it's always when critical services aren't happening. Remember when we talked about that special sauce, that one thing that makes you special? That's really what's critical, right? That's what it really takes. There's mission critical things you do that can keep the revenue coming in. If that stops, then you're in a disaster, right? And do your employees understand when it's a disruption or a disaster? Do they understand what steps need to be taken if it's a disruption, or what steps need to be taken if it's a disaster? And again, and I don't know, and I'm really apologize for my computer. I don't know why it's going all flaky on me. And of course, the final thing is, if it's an emergency, do all employees know what to do? Do they know what their roles are? Do they know what their responsibilities are? Do they really understand what needs to happen? So again, it's going to happen. I always tell people, I get invited in to talk to a lot of corporations, And I'm always tell people I am the bearer of bad news. Listen, I'm a really nice person, but within 10 minutes, I'm going to tell you 2,000 ways in which you're going to die, right? It's an unfortunate role, but it really is important to start to begin to understand it is going to happen to us. And no company at any place on anywhere on this planet is totally safe from any type of disaster. And again, we're not just talking about natural disasters. We could talk about man-made disasters. You could talk about internal threats, external threats. We'll talk about this. And then again, how much does it cost your company when you're non-operational? What are you looking at from a company perspective? And this is just a real simple thing to look at, is what cost of downtime. Look at your downtime and figure out how much does it cost for me not to be working. So you look at what happened here, Hurricane Ida, right? I mean, I talk about this is that we were so incredibly fortunate to have Ida pass between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. While it was horrific for the folks in between, for us, we were very, very fortunate. You could see that it is the second largest storm to make landfall since Katrina, right? And then you look at Ida is tied to Hurricane Laura, and then it devastated, obviously, South Louisiana with the poles and everything else, right? So we had electricity. I was gone for an extended period of time because I didn't have power where I live. So it's one of these things where this was just last year. And if you were paying attention, we've already seen the preliminary output from the University of Colorado that's talking about we're going to have above average hurricane season again this year. So again, looking forward to hurricane season, we really have to look at what's going to happen. So you can look at all the numbers. Here is all the numbers that from the individual assistance to the SBA of where the money went, right? So there was a lot of money spent for the recovery just in our area, right? So you look at this and say that, again, it not only was it extremely deadly, but it was extremely expensive. And as you look at this and say, who pays for this? Obviously, these are your tax dollars at work. So again, what happens is these are getting more and more expensive and more difficult. So as we look at this, is that our risk for disasters going down. So, I mean, are cyber threats going down, right? Is the cost of living going down? Is the cost of materials going down? What about competition, right? So are we at risk? What about a pandemic, right? Have we seen, I saw the other day when we're coming out of the side of pandemic, but has that affected your business in some way? What about the cost of recovery and who pays recovery, which I just said? And the real question that we always ask is, do you know exactly, and I don't mean around, but exactly where you are at the greatest risk, and can you be absolutely sure that your risks are mitigated? And again, do you know what your insurance covers or doesn't cover? And that is the number one way people mitigate against disasters, is through your insurance. And that is really, really important for you to be able to talk to your insurance agent and to really understand what you need to do to make sure that all of your business is covered by insurance. These are some pictures. Obviously, these are pictures from Katrina, but you can see all disasters are local and personal. These are pictures that were taken throughout Katrina, all except the middle ones are the ones that I took throughout South Louisiana. Most of these, the top three of them are from, top two are from Chalmette. So if you look at this, is that these are just some numbers, and I know that I really talk about this, but the real challenge to this is not the fact that there's not enough information. The real challenge behind this is that there has to be a desire on your side as a business owner to really say, okay, you win, Bonnie. We really do have to sit down and do this. And that's why we really try to continue to push this and say, we've got to have this, so that if you look at what's going to happen, you've got to really sit down and put together a plan and make sure that you're able to survive. So again, the role of business continuity is to return to revenue producing activity as quickly as possible. Think about this in terms of how long could your business go without any income? How long could you go without any income? How long could your employees go without any income? And these are the kind of things that you look at and say, well, what really makes the world go around is this idea of money. And we really do need to return to revenue producing as quickly as possible. Here's just 6 categories of risk. These are the risks that we look at. And as you can see, not all of them are based on weather or those type of events. You've got a lot of different opportunities here for different challenges, right? And as you can see, communicable diseases has been added simply because of the pandemic. It was there for a long time and then fell off for a long time. But as you know, this pandemic has really kind of changed things in many ways. So the idea behind planning is to protect people and property in that order, right? You want to make sure that you have a plan for your people and you have a plan for your property. We've talked about resuming your critical business operations, minimize downtime, preserve reputation, and meet your obligations. It's really, really, really important to be able to do this. Here's the top threats. So you look at your top threats and you say, okay, these are the things that could happen to my organization or to my business, and what can I do to help mitigate against these, right? You can't stop power loss, but what can you do to mitigate against power loss? What can you do to mitigate against loss of sales or customers? What can you do if your largest customer goes to your competitor? What can you do about that? Do you even know who your largest customer is? Do you know what percentage of the business they have? Do you know their percentage of profit dollars? There's a lot of questions that we can ask within each of these threats or risks to really start to uncover what makes our business special. So whenever we start talking about business continuity or anything like this, the one question that we always ask is, who do we depend on and who depends on us? It's a real simple series of questions, right? So who do we depend on? Well, we depend on our clients, our customers. We depend on our employees. We depend on our suppliers. We depend on ourselves, right? So, and then who depends on us? Well, our clients, our employees, our family, they depend on us as well, right? So this is really when you're starting to look at how all of our business works and how the threads of our business can be pulled apart so that we can pull apart our business so that we in turn can weave it back together and understand, as I talked about earlier, what makes our business special. And obviously you can't plan for every scenario. You can't plan on a Tuesday afternoon, you're going to have a category 3 storm that passes just to the west of us and this and this and that. No, you can't plan for that. What you can plan for is a hurricane. Or you can plan for not having access to our building for a day, a week, a month, 6 months. Again, but the idea is to have a plan that addresses all risks, right? So it's not 10,000 little plans. It's one plan that can address all risk. So you don't plan for every little bitty thing. You look for in a bigger picture, and how can we plan based on that, right? So again, to make it as simple as possible, looking across the board. So here's very simple steps. I won't go through each and every one of them. I'll make sure that at the end of this, all attendees will get this PowerPoint presentation in a PDF, but you'll be able to see, here's just 10 very simple steps in creating a plan. If you go through these steps and really work through it, you will be able to start to put together a very strong business continuity or disaster recovery plan that will allow you to really build towards the future. Here's some of the things that need to be included, right? You need to understand your critical business functions. You need to have your key contacts, your key suppliers, your critical phone numbers, your critical supplies, right? You need to put all of this information together and really start to say, okay, help me understand. Let's put all of this down so that I can sort out the information that I need to make my plan work. Again, and I'm really sorry for this. I don't know why. So there are a lot of reasons that are the benefits, and I won't go over all of these. But again, the idea behind this is that it obviously will help you survive, right? That's really the end and be all of all of this. But if you do it right, you'll see lower operational expenses because you won't be throwing good money after bad. That's one of the biggest questions that people have always asked me, especially after disasters, especially after Katrina. The question was, when does good money go bad? When do I know that I need to kind of change what I'm doing or focus my efforts in a different way? When do I know that this money is this very good money that I'm investing in this way in my business? Is this good money, or is this good money that's going to turn bad? So that's really part of the questions that you start to have to look at is, how can we make operational expenses make sense as we move forward? Obviously, and here's some of the the tips to really walk away with and think, what do I need to know? Make sure that your data is backed up, right? And not necessarily on a jump drive, right? Those little USB drives that you plug in. Back up your data to the cloud, right? Get it. Google has it. There's a lot of opportunities to get your data backed up onto the cloud. It's secure up there, and you can access it from anywhere, right? So make sure that you have your data backed up. I say this no matter what kind of company you are, it really doesn't matter. You really still are in the business of data, right? You need to know who your suppliers are. You need to know how to contact employees. You need to know your accounting records, right? If you're doing any kind of point of sale, a lot of times that's online as well. So you really want to make sure that you back up your essential information. You also want to review your insurance. Do you know exactly what's covered and not covered? Here's some of the questions that you ask. Have you shopped my insurance lately? Do you know what's covered, what exactly not covered? If you've changed something within your organization over the last 6 months, is that covered? You really need to sit down with your insurance agent or insurance broker at least annually to really sit down and have a conversation with them and really start to understand what is covered and what isn't covered. Insurance can be written on just about everything, right? But there's a cost to that. And so you really have to look at the cost for what is it going to mean to mitigate against this disaster. How much is this going to cost me to do that? And that's really, really, really sitting down and having a conversation with your insurance agent or broker. And I often say this, if they are not able to have this conversation with you, find someone that will. And again, start a savings plan for a rainy day fund. Nothing better than to put a little money aside. Listen, and I get it. I understand that money with all entrepreneurs is tight, right? Sometimes you got to rob Peter to pay Paul. I understand that. But if you could just get in the habit of paying yourself first, taking a little money aside first before the money leaves, and then put that money aside for a rainy day fund. You want to make sure that you have the money to move forward, because it does take time before your insurance money comes. It's not like, oh, there's a storm, and then tomorrow the insurance agent is there writing you a check, right? Again, it's one of those things where the insurance will cover exactly what's in your policy, not more, not less. So what's exactly what's in your policy. So you really want to make sure that if you have to have some money put aside to help you bridge between the time of the disaster and the time the insurance money comes in. You also want to plan to stay in business. Here's some different things to really think about. You could have a continuity plan, your emergency plan. How do you deal with fire? How do you deal with theft? How do you deal if someone has a heart attack? What does that look like? Do you need emergency supplies where you are? Again, shelter in place or go. Again, part of that is, and you need to understand that from your employee's perspective as well. If your employees are going to go, you should know where they're going. You should know, their family situations, right? You should really be part of the solution with them. Again, always, always, always thinking about, as I say all the time, employees are people too, but they also have family obligations. Obviously, protect your business. You want to look through that you've insurance coverage, utility disruptions, make sure that you've secured your physical assets. Any kind of equipment, is your equipment in the best or safest place? Is it off the ground? I mean, that's something that we learned obviously here when it floods. Again, even if it's 2 inches, in a building, right? 2 inches can destroy 2 inches of water, sorry, in a building. It can destroy a lot of things if you're not careful. Then obviously cybersecurity. This is becoming the largest issue, both for a small and medium-sized business as it is for major corporations. Cybersecurity, what they're finding is that small and medium-sized businesses do not have the wherewithal, and a part of it is money, part of it is information, and part of it's time, right? So they don't have the resources needed to really mitigate against cybersecurity. So again, your data has value, and your data has a lot of value to you. So you want to make sure that you mitigate against cybersecurity and make sure that your data is secure. Obviously, manage your cash and available credit. I mean, there's nothing worse than not being able to buy something on credit or to have the cash if there's a disaster, right? The number one reason small businesses go bankrupt is lack of cash, not profits. The number one reason small businesses go bankrupt is lack of cash, right? It's because you've expanded too quickly. You don't have the revenue to cover that. If you've expanded too quickly, you don't have enough people to manage your expansion. You don't have a big enough location, right? So this idea of too much and not enough is always going to be a problem, right? You have too much of one thing and not enough of another. As we say, money can solve a lot of those problems. So you really have to manage your money or your assets, right? Your ability to have access to capital, and that's cash and available credit. Always, I suggest, is that you have an open line of credit with your bank. Get that today. You may not need it today, but get it today. If you ever need it, it's there. You don't want to be standing in line after disaster looking for a line of credit, right? Because that takes time. Get it today. That's the one thing you can do starting next week is go talk to your banker and talk about the options that are available for you. Again, develop a database culture. That's to understand what's going on in your business, right? I always talk to business owners and they give me an about number. Oh, it's about this, it's about that, or maybe this, or maybe that. You can't do that. You need to know exactly. So it's like I've said before, who is your number one customer? What percentage of profit are they? How often do they buy? What do they buy? So you've got to go through that. What about your next best customer? Who are they? Who is your competition for these customers? What do they look like? How do they shop? Right? So part of this is understanding how your industry or how your company runs. And again, understanding your margins on all products. I often say, how much is this pencil? Right? How much is this pencil? I ask a business owner, how much is this? And they'll tell me how much they sell it for. And I'm like, how much do you buy it for? Well, they'll tell me how much they sell it for. If I buy 1 million pencils at 99 cents and I sell the 1 million pencils for 99 cents, I've still made no money. In fact, I've lost money because I've had to get them in, I've had to put them out, I've had to display them, now I've had to sell them, I've lost money. So you've got to know your margins on everything. You've got to understand your profit margins. You got to understand, again, that special sauce within your business to ensure that on every sale, you're making money. And then always, always, always have a way to keep recruiting and attracting good talent, right? Again, it takes a long time to get somebody that really knows your business and is really good at what they do. The loss of them could be catastrophic for your business. So again, always keep looking for good talent and always, always try to retain them. Understanding your supply chain, right? I mean, have we not seen this, especially over the pandemic, the supply chain? Everything you want is on a cargo ship coming from China right now, right? Your Christmas stuff is on a cargo ship coming from China right now. Because of this very, very, very brittle global supply chain, your stuff could be lost at sea, your stuff could be allocated to someone else. You could not have the things you need to make sure that you can meet what your customers need, right? So you've got to understand, where did the stuff come from? Can you get it from other people? And if you have to send stuff out, how are you going to get it out, right? So again, you want to really make sure that you understand the flow of your supplies back and forth, right? It's really, really, really important to understand that. And again, a credit hold is a supply chain risk, but cash on delivery is absolutely worse. And this goes back to the previous slide, right? To really talk about understanding that cash is king, right? Finally, to look into this is turning excuses into actions. And listen, I get it. Everybody is busy. And people chuckle all the time, as I've been saying to people, you know, we're in festival season right now. We're kind of busy, right? So the Saints, we picked a wide receiver, and then I think we have a new offensive lineman. So soon we'll be talking Saints again. But last weekend, French Quarter Fest, this weekend, next weekend, Jazz Fest, and then of course, you know, it's summer and we have a lot of fun things to talk about summer other than heat, right? So this idea is we always want to make excuses why we can't. And so we thought we had no risk. Could never be a good option here because we all know that we are at risk. Takes too much time, takes too much money. Well, the other side of that is what is compared to what? You know, and people always talk to me about that. Compared to what? Not having a business when you have all the time in the world, or not having any money at all, right? So we had more important things to talk about, or things to think about, or we were too small. There's no such thing as an excuse that is where to go, or there are no excuses that aren't helpful, right? We didn't know where to go for help. Obviously, the folks at the Urban League are able to help you. They are able to walk you through and really kind of help you work through these challenges and these problems to really understand the situation that makes your organization unique. And that's really important. So I always chuckle about this, right? And so the one thing, and all of this information is good information, right? And I'm sure if you've attended any webinar about this is nothing new. This is nothing different. It's the same old, same old. I've been talking about this since Katrina. So again, it's the same stuff, just different color slides, right? But the one thing that I always talk about in the terms of a webinar, you're going to forget about this webinar come Monday, right? If you're like me, I won't even remember that I was in a webinar, right? But what I really want you to do is today pick 2 things that you could commit to and say, I'm going to do something today, right? You could put together a contact list of your employees. You could put together a supplier list, right? Just write them out, right? You don't even need to take a lot of time. Just write down your employee contact list. Ask them for a secondary contact. Ask them if they're going to evacuate, where they would evacuate to. Ask them how they would evacuate, right? And talk to your suppliers and vendors. Really start to understand them. Have a conversation with them. Get them to talk to you about the way they view your business. Ask them, are we a good customer of yours? I mean, people are like, why would I ask them that? Well, again, part of that is that how they see you also means how well they're going to be able to supply you with your goods or services that you need, right? And I always say this, with all things being equal, I don't mind being a little more equal. So I want to make sure that my suppliers or vendors think of me very highly, that when I call them on the phone or I need something from them, they're going to be like, oh, that's Bonnie. We really, really want to help her out, right? You also want to look at any possible alternate recovery locations. And that means if you're going to have to move, or if you're going to work from home, or what does that look like? What happens if you can't go to work where you go to work every day? What does that look like? What are the plans for that? So these are just some really, really, really simple things. Fortunately for all of us, there's a lot of information that's out there that's totally, as I say, free, at no cost to you. Our governor's office of Homeland Security, which is for Louisiana, has to get a game plan, which is make a business plan, right? So they have a outline for putting together business continuity plan. Or you may want to get something from FEMA, right? And it's a continuity resource toolkit by FEMA, or the Open for Business disaster.org has IBHS has also a great toolkit that you could use as well. These are 3 very good, very simple plans with, templates that you can fill in with your information. And again, I encourage you to go back to the folks at Urban League and really go back to them and have a conversation with them and say, I really want to sit down and have these conversations. I really want to start to understand my business in a different way. We talk about working in your business and working on your business. Working in your business is the stuff you do every day. Working on your business is the stuff that you need to do to make sure that your business has a tomorrow, a day after tomorrow, and a day after that. Good businesses spend their time working in and on their business 50-50. So again, a good business owner spends 50% of their time working on their business and 50% of their time working in their business. You can hire people to work in your business. You can't hire people to work on your business, right? That's your job. That's why you have a business in the first place. You're the vision. You're the reason why your business exists. And part of that is you want to make sure that there is a tomorrow, and it is really important to make sure that you have a plan moving forward. So again, as we look at this final slide, the idea behind this is that you could wind up in the trash heap as well. All it takes is to drive around the city of New Orleans. And again, I often chuckle. I'm at that age now where I am somebody's grandmother, but I talk about the stores that are no longer here, right? And that was something that was so unique to New Orleans that we really saw a lot of changes after Katrina, right? As we say, ain't there no more, right? But part of it is you look at Krauss, you can look at Maison Blanche, you look at Gachos, you look at Gold Rings. You can look at all of these, and these are these are retail places. Go to restaurants. How many restaurants have we seen that we're not going to be able to recover because of COVID, right? So part of this is to understand that being an entrepreneur is hard. It's really hard. And what we have to do is do everything within our power to help mitigate against all of the challenges that we face. And the good news is that there's help out there, and there's people that are willing to sit with us, roll their sleeves up and say, I'm with you, buddy. How can I help? This is my contact information. If I could ever be of service to any of you, please never hesitate to reach out to me. Again, my background is I spent a lifetime in the IT sector, so I know a lot, unfortunately, about IT. But I do a lot of public-private partnerships, and I do a lot of work with small to medium organizations as well as some Fortune 100 companies. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your willingness to listen. And again, please, 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 if you can't do 2 things today, do 1. Just do 1.
All right, thank you, Bonnie, for a very informative session. Please take one last look at the chat in the control panel for resource links and contact information. Also, as Bonnie mentioned, I'm going to try and send that PDF file with the information today. And just as a reminder, you will be redirected to a brief survey. Once this session ends, please give us your input so that we can implement your suggestions as best as we can. We thank you for attending today and hope you join us for future events. Enjoy the rest of your Friday, everybody.